Welcome to my channel. I hope you like and subscribe, and thank you so much for watching. In today's tutorial, I'm going to show you how to crochet these little pants or baby trousers for baby boys and girls between 0 and 3 months. I made them to match the little sweater that I showed you already in my channel. I'll go ahead and leave you the link to that tutorial in the information box. And stay tuned for the matching baby hat and baby booties. I'll go ahead and show you that in another tutorial. And don't forget, if you prefer written pattern, check out my Etsy shop. I'll leave the link to my Etsy shop up here on the right hand side and in the information box below. Thank you so much for your support. Now, to make these little pants, this is the yarn that I used. This is DK weight yarn, but you can also use any number 3 yarn or 8 ply. For the 0 to 3 month size, you're going to need a total of 76 grams. You may need less or more depending on the size that you make. Now, let's get started, and thank you so much for watching. Okay, to begin and make these baby pants to match this little cardigan sweater, this is the Sammy cardigan sweater. If you prefer the written pattern instead, I'll go ahead and leave you the link in the information box directly to this pattern. It's available on my Etsy shop. So here to begin, I'll be using this 3.5mm crochet hook, and today I'm using this DK weight yarn. At the beginning of the video, I showed you the yarn that I'm using, and I told you how much yarn we're going to need for the size that we're making here in this tutorial, which is for 0 to 3 month size. You can also use any DK weight, any number 3 or 8 ply. So here to begin, I have 70 chains. This chain without stretching, it's measuring about 38 centimeters, which is about 15 inches. Now, if your chain is off by 1 or 2 centimeters, it's okay. Just continue with the first row. So here to begin, we're going to join to the first chain, so make sure that your chain is not twisted. Insert your hook into the first chain here and join. So now to begin row 1, I'm going to chain 1. Beginning into the first chain, which is the same chain that we joined into, insert your hook through there and make a half double crochet. Make a half double crochet into the next chain, a half double crochet into the next, and so on. For this first row, all I'm going to do is just half double crochets, and at the end of this first row, I'm going to have 70 half double crochets. Continue, I'll meet you at the end. I'm here at the end of this first row. I have a total of 70 half double crochets. To finish the row, go on top of the first half double crochet and join with a slip stitch. Now for row 2, chain 1. Now beginning with the first half double crochet, this is the same one that we joined into, make a front post half double crochet. Into the next, a back post half double crochet, front post half double crochet into the next, back post half double crochet into the next, and so on. For this second row, this is how I'm going to continue. I'm just going to continue alternating between front post and back post half double crochets. Continue like this. I will meet you at the end. I'm here at the end of the second row. In this row, I did front post and back post half double crochets. My last stitch is a back post. To finish, go on top of the first stitch and join with a slip stitch. And this is how I finish row 2 with a total of 70 stitches. Now for row 3, chain 1. In this row, we're going to repeat the same thing, starting with this first stitch here. This is a front post half double crochet, so make a front post half double crochet. The next one, back post half double crochet. Next one, front post half double crochet, back post half double crochet, and so on. Continue like this all around for this third row. I'll meet you at the end. I'm here at the end of the third row for the waistband. Now here at the end, here's my last stitch. This is a back post stitch. I have 70 stitches. To finish the row, I'm going to go here to the beginning on top of the first stitch and join with a slip stitch. And this is how I finish the third row. The waistband is done, and this is how it looks. Now, if you want to adjust this so that it fits perfect on your baby, what you need to do is just take the measurement of the waist, and based on that, go ahead and make your chain. There is no stitch multiple, but I do recommend that you make it in multiples of 2 to make it easier to divide for the leg. I normally leave 3 or 4 stitches in the center, and then the rest are for the legs. So it's an easy adjustment that you can go ahead and do on your own. In the information box, I'll go ahead and leave you a standard measurements that you can follow if you want to make these little pants in a different size using standard measurements. I'm going to go ahead and now continue with the first row of the body here, and we're going to start the stitch pattern. I'm going to be using a variation of the herringbone stitch, which is the same stitch pattern that I used to make this little sweater. So here to begin, we're going to chain 2, and beginning into the same stitch here that we joined, yarn over, insert your hook into this stitch and grab a loop. I have 3 loops on the hook. Take 1 loop off, grab a loop and take 1 loop off, grab a loop and take 2 loops off. And that's the herringbone stitch. One thing, from here on, the 2 chains will never count as a stitch. Again, yarn over and into the next stitch, insert your hook and grab a loop. I have 3 loops. Take 1 loop off, grab a loop and take 1 loop off, grab a loop and take 2 loops off. Yarn over again and into the next stitch, grab a loop, take 1 loop off, take 1 loop off, take 2 loops off. Again, yarn over, grab a loop, 3 loops on the hook, take 1 loop off, take 1 loop off, take 2 loops off. Continue like this all around for the first row of the body. I will meet you at the end. I'm here at the end of the first row for the herringbone stitch. This is the first row of the body. Now here's my last stitch. I have 70 stitches up to here. Now to finish the row, we're always going to go here on top of the first herringbone stitch, not the chains. The chains are just there so that there's no gap between the last stitch and the first stitch, so the 2 chains do not count. So to finish, go on top of the first herringbone stitch and join with a slip stitch. And this is how I finished this first row. Now, before I continue, I'm going to place a stitch marker here on this side to mark the front of the baby pants. From here on, this is going to be the front and this is going to be the wrong side. So now to continue with row 2, I'm going to chain 2 and turn. To work the herringbone stitch in the round, you always chain 2 and turn. Now beginning into the first herringbone stitch, which is this here, you can see the 2 loops right there, not this here. This here is the slip stitch, so do not make a stitch there, because if you do, you're going to be adding stitches, but rather go into the stitch here, which is the first one. You can see it right here, and you can see the stitch right on top, the 2 loops right there. So here to begin, yarn over, insert your hook into that first stitch, grab a loop. I have 3 loops on the hook. Take 1 loop off, grab a loop and take 1 loop off, grab a loop and take 2 loops off. Yarn over again and into the next stitch, grab a loop, take 1 loop off, grab a loop and take 1 loop off, grab a loop and take 2 loops off. And that's how you're going to continue for the second row. This second row is what you're going to repeat from here on. You simply chain 2 and turn for each row. So continue like this. I will meet you at the end of this second row to once again show you how to finish each row from here on and how to start each row. So I'll meet you at the end. I'm here at the end of the second row. This second row is being worked on the wrong side. Now here at the end, I need to make one last stitch, and I'm going to make it right here into this very last stitch. So yarn over, insert your hook, grab a loop, take 1 loop off, grab a loop and take 1 loop off, grab a loop and take 2 loops off. I have 70 stitches. Now to finish each row from here on, you're going to go on top of the first herringbone stitch, insert your hook there and join with a slip stitch. And here is row 2. Now to start each row from here on, you always chain 2 and turn. And beginning into the first herringbone stitch, not the slip stitch, which is this first stitch, but rather this big stitch right here, that one, you're going to yarn over and insert your hook there and grab a loop. Now take 1 loop off, grab a loop and take 1 loop off, grab a loop and take 2 loops off. Here's the first herringbone stitch, and these are the 2 chains. Remember, the 2 chains do not count. And then continue and do the rest for each one of the stitches. And that's how you're going to continue from here on. Now again, to finish this row, you're going to go here on top of the first herringbone stitch, You can put a stitch marker here if you like. Join with a slip stitch, chain 2 and turn, and then repeat the same thing. Now I'm not sure how many rows I'm going to do here, but continue watching. I will let you know exactly how many rows I'm going to do, so continue and I'll meet you at the end of that row. Okay, I'm almost done with this part. I have done a total of 14 rows. From here up to here, there's 14 rows. The last row that I did, row 14, I worked on the wrong side, and this part here, it's measuring from the top of the waist to the end of row 14. It's measuring about 15.5 centimeters, which is a little bit over 6 inches. So this part here is done. Now if you're making this for any other size, you can add more rows here if you want. The only thing I recommend is that make sure that your last row is worked on the wrong side so that this part here is the same. We're going to separate the legs, and I'm going to do this from the right side. This here is the back side. So to separate the legs now, what I have done here is I have placed some stitch markers. This is where I finished row 14. I just joined to the first stitch. So I counted 1, 2, and into the second stitch, I put a stitch marker, and then I counted 31 stitches. And then I placed a stitch marker into the next stitch to mark 4 stitches here in the center. So here's the stitch marker, which has a stitch. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. The fourth stitch here has a stitch marker. From this next stitch up to this next one, before the stitch marker, I have 31 stitches for the second leg. And here at the end, I have 2 stitches, 1 and 2, so that here for the back side you should have 4 stitches, 1, 2, 3, 4, then 31 stitches for the first leg, 4 stitches for the front, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 31 stitches for the second leg. And that's how we're going to separate the legs. So here, to do this part, I'm just going to work the center part here, the crotch area. So to do this, at the end of row 14, which was worked on the wrong side, I just joined with a slip stitch. Now chain 2 and turn. Now beginning into the next stitch, which is this one here, make a herringbone stitch. Into the next, which is where I have the stitch marker, make another herringbone stitch. So here I have 2. Now to separate the first leg, chain 1. You can make more chains if you want. I'm only going to go ahead and make 1. Now skip 31 stitches and into the stitch where I have the stitch marker, which is the first stitch out of the 4 here for the front, I'm going to make a herringbone stitch. Now make a herringbone stitch into the next 3 stitches. There. Now to separate the second leg, chain 1, skip 31 stitches, and into the stitch where I have the stitch marker, which is the next stitch here, make a herringbone stitch. And into the next, which is the last stitch here, make the second herringbone stitch here for this side. Now to finish the row, we're going to go here on top of the first herringbone stitch and join with a slip stitch. There, now cut your yarn and pass your yarn through this last loop, and this part here is done. We have separated the legs. We have 4 stitches for the front side and 4 stitches for the back side, and in between I have a chain. If you want to add more chains to add to the leg measurement, you can add as many chains as you want. There is no stitch multiple. What you need to do is, once we get started on the legs, is for each chain that you have, just add 1 herringbone stitch. Now I'm going to make this first leg here. So to do this, I'm going to go right here in the chain space between the leg here. I'm going to grab a loop and chain 4. Now make sure that you leave a nice long tail here so that when we are done with the legs and everything, you just join these stitches here in the center. So I'm going to leave a little bit here. This is about 10 inches or so, and that's going to be used to close the gap here in the center. I'm going to show you that once I finish the pants. I'm going to show you how to close the stitches. So here, insert your hook in the chain space on this side, grab a loop, bring it through, and chain 2. This first row of the leg is going to be worked on the right side. Now, in this same chain space here, make a herringbone stitch. Now make a herringbone stitch here at the end of this last stitch of these 4 that we did to separate the legs. Insert your hook there and make a herringbone stitch there as well. Now make a herringbone stitch into the first stitch of the 31 that we left for the leg. So here I have 3 herringbone stitches so far. 1, 2, 3. Now I'm going to continue all around making 1 herringbone stitch for each one of these stitches until I come here to this other side. I will meet you right here to show you how we're going to finish this first row for the first leg. I'm here at the end of the second row. I have 33 stitches up to here. Here's my last herringbone. I have 2 here at the beginning, 31 plus 2, that's 33. I'm going to make 1 more and I'm going to do it here. Here are the 4 stitches that we did as we separated the legs. At the end of the 4th stitch here, insert your hook and make your last herringbone stitch here. There, that's 34. To finish the row, go on top of the first herringbone stitch and join with a slip stitch. And this is how I finish row 1 with 34 herringbone stitches. Now, if you made more chains here to divide the legs, then you just make 1 herringbone stitch for each one of those stitches. Now, for row 2, chain 2 and turn. Now, to begin here into this first stitch, make a herringbone stitch. 1 herringbone stitch into the next, 1 into the next, and so on. For this row, all you're going to do is just make 1 herringbone stitch for each stitch of the previous row, so that at the end of the second row, you also have 34 stitches. Continue like this all around. I'll meet you at the end to show you once again how to finish each row from here on and how to start each row, since you're going to continue on your own and finish the leg. I'm here at the end of the second row. For the first leg here, I have 34 stitches. Row 2 is being worked on the wrong side. To finish each row from here on, you always go on top of the first stitch and join with a slip stitch. Now to start each row from here on, you chain 2 and then turn. Beginning into the first stitch, make a herringbone stitch. Into the next, a herringbone stitch, and so on. This is how we're going to continue all around. And at the end of each row, you're always going to have 34 stitches. To finish, you just go here on top of the first stitch, join with a slip stitch, chain 2 and turn, and then repeat the same thing. Now, I'm not sure how many rows I'm going to do here for the leg, but continue watching. I will let you know exactly how many rows I'm going to do, so continue, and I'll meet you at the end of that row. I finished making this part. I have done a total of 14 rows. Row 14 was worked on the wrong side. Continue watching. At the end of the tutorial, I'll give you the finished measurements. Now, what we're going to do next is the cuff, or the bottom of the leg here. So to begin, row 14 was worked on the wrong side. So turn for row 15. In row 15, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make front posts and back post half double crochet. So beginning with this first stitch here, make a front post half double crochet. Into the next, a back post half double crochet, front post half double crochet into the next, and so on. Continue like this for row 15. I will meet you at the end. I'm here at the end of row 15. In this row, I did front post and back post half double crochets. To finish the row, go on top of the first half double crochet and join with a slip stitch. And here is row 15 with a total of 34 stitches. Now for row 16, chain 1, and here I'm going to start with a front post half double crochet, into the next back post half double crochet, front post half double crochet into the next, back post half double crochet into the next, and so on. Continue like this and finish row 16. I will meet you at the end. I finished row 16 here at the end. I just joined to the beginning with a slip stitch, cut my yarn, and passed my yarn through that last loop. So the leg is all done, and this is how it looks. Now I'm going to show you how to make the second leg. So this here is the back side. We're going to go here in the chain space between the legs, insert your hook there, grab a loop, and chain 2. Now into this same chain space here, make a herringbone stitch. Now here we have these 4 stitches that we did as we separated the legs. So at the end here in this last stitch into that space, insert your hook and make a herringbone stitch there. So far I have 2. Now into the first stitch out of the 31 that we left for the leg, make the 3rd herringbone stitch here. And now all you're going to do is just make herringbone stitches all around until you finish this first row. Continue. I will meet you here at the end of this row. I'm here at the end of this first row for the second leg. Up to here I have 33 herringbone stitches. I need to make one last one, and I'm going to do it here at the end of these 4 stitches that we did when we separated the legs. So insert your hook into that space and make your last herringbone stitch there. Now to finish, go on top of the first herringbone stitch and join with a slip stitch. And here is row 1 of the second leg with 34 stitches. From here on, you're just going to continue exactly in the same way how we did the first leg. So here to start you off, row 2, you're going to chain 2 and turn, beginning into this first stitch right here. Make your first herringbone stitch, and into each one of these stitches, repeat the same thing. Continue and make the second leg. You're going to do 14 rows and then 2 rows of front post and back post half double crochets. Continue and finish the second leg, and then I'll come back and show you the finished baby pants, and I'll give you the finished measurements. I finished making the second leg. The baby pants are done. Now let me show you how to close this gap here. You're going to go from the inside here. Now all you have to do to close this gap here is find the 4 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to go through this first stitch and then the next stitch here in the back. Find the next one right here. And the 3rd stitch, which is this here. Right here. And the 4th stitch, which is this last one here. Now this part here is closed, and all you have to do is just reinforce this last stitch here so that it doesn't open. Tie a knot there, and then just hide your ends. Let's see how this looks. Perfect. That gap is closed and the baby pants are all done. Now here around the waist, all I did was I made a chain of 130 chains, and I just weaved it here in the center right here and just tied a little bow there, and the baby pants are all done. Now let me give you the finished measurement. The total length from the top of the waist to the end here of the leg, it's measuring about 30.5 centimeters, which is about 12 inches. Now the length of the leg from the crotch area here to the end of the leg, it's measuring about 5.5 inches, which is about 14 centimeters. Now from the top of the waist to the middle here of the crotch, it's measuring about 16.5 centimeters, which is about 6.5 inches. Now the waist, just the top, it's measuring about 20.5 centimeters, which is about 8 inches. So based on these measurements, these little pants are for baby boys and girls between 0 and 3 months. I made them to match the little sweater that I showed you already in my channel. I'll leave the link to that tutorial in the information box. And stay tuned for the matching little hat and the matching baby booties. I'm working on those right now. I'll go ahead and show you the complete set, so stay tuned for all of these tutorials. And remember, if you prefer a written pattern, check out my Etsy shop. I'll leave the link to my Etsy shop up here on the right hand side and in the information box below. Thank you so much for your support. I'll leave the link to the baby sweater in the information box since I already have that in my Etsy shop. Stay tuned for the other patterns. I'll go ahead and add them as soon as they're ready. Okay, so this was today's tutorial. I hope you like it. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time.